Okay. Folks, it's the moderator, Mike Trim here for WPTV. If you're just joining us and listening in, I'm just waiting for a thumbs up from our awesome IT directors that can point us in the right direction of just kind of restarting, and not necessarily restarting with everything, but just kind of resetting to where we are if you are just joining us. That being said, currently speaking is Mr. John Hawkins. If you just joined us, he's the Director of Workforce Development at EMSI, and he has been talking about, boy, all the statistics rain down, the labor stats before and after, you know, this year, the pandemic. I shouldn't say after this year, but just some interesting data when it comes to the numbers and what they're showing and what we're dealing with. And even the last slide, Mr. Hawkins, as you could speak to, is even about COVID. So I think, unless the just asking the IT director, should we move forward?
Yes, we can move forward. I'm sorry.
Roger that. Okay, Mr. Hawkins, please continue with your presentation. We are all eyes on you, sir.
Great. So I was the last slide I was covering here again was looking at a health risk index. So it's a ranking of every single county. Obviously, every single county is not, it doesn't fit on my slide here, but so this is going to be the top 20 counties in the state of Florida, but we are able to rank all of the counties in the state of Florida based on their risk potential for future outbreaks, given the current situation. So unfortunately, Palm Beach County ranks 3rd on the list of counties in the state of Florida. And you can see that South Florida is getting hit particularly hard in comparison to the rest of the state or even the surrounding states. This data is updated daily, as are job posting data, which are a key metric right now, given that there's such a lag in the regular labor market data. So to be able to see what's going on sort of in real time, at least some sort of a signal as to what's happening in the labor market. Data like job posting data are critical in times like this. So the bottom graphic there is looking at the job posting trends for the last 12 months of job postings. So from June of 2020 to June of 2019. And you can see sort of the inverse there of postings taking place. Actually, it started back in just about October is when it sort of flipped. Usually in the winter we see a dip and then it picks back up in the spring, but this year it certainly didn't pick back up in the spring. It just continued a trajectory downward in terms of postings at a rate of 35% decrease. But you'll see as of April, postings have started to track in a positive direction. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. So looking at Palm Beach County specific, I've got some COVID-19 statistics as well as some job posting statistics, and you can see sort of the inverse reaction that they have on one another. So the top graphic is looking at number of confirmed cases. And you'll see in the last 30 days, there was a 21% decrease in the number of cases. And then the next statistic is the number of deaths due to COVID, and that is even steeper decrease, which is the right direction that we're heading. And then we're looking at the posting data over the last 30 days. We've seen a 9% increase in the job posting traffic that's out there, and that's about 11,500 job postings that we've seen, unique job postings that we've seen during that time period. Next one, please. Some employment and unemployment numbers specific to the county now. In May of 2020, employment was just shy of, almost 500,000, a little bit higher than 500,000, not just shy. And then the light gray line across the top there is the previous 12 months. So you can see obviously where our dip was there, but it's making a nice backwards J as we're heading, as people are going back to work and we're heading out of there. The inverse of that, sorry, that was the employment numbers. The inverse of that is the unemployment number, where we've got the spike starting in March, and then sort of peaking in April and then, or mid-April, and then making its way back down at a rate of 13% unemployment in May, but a decrease of 10% from the previous May. Next one, please. Now looking at some specific industries, now this is looking at job posting data. Again, that's really the only reactive data set that we have right now that can give us some intel on either specific jobs or companies or the industries that those companies are within. So this is a comparison of the last 30 days of job posting activity in terms of industries. So which industries are posting in this current 30-day period than the previous 30-day period. So we can see here that we've got leisure and hospitality starting to edge over where it was 30 days ago. Same with retail trade, professional business services, so on and so forth. So we start to see these positive trends as more and more businesses are opening back up, and people are venturing out and starting to shop a little bit. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. This is looking at the last week. Again, we see the very similar trends here with leisure and hospitality at the top spot there in terms of percent increase over the last 30 days. And then information, other services, et cetera, are sort of following that trend. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. Now looking at career areas in specific, again, this is the 30-day trend, 30 days, current 30 days over the previous 30 days. As you can see, it's tracking right along with the industries that were posting more. So we're seeing more postings related to cashiers, family practitioners, childcare workers, things like that. As things start to open up, we start to see some of those other services pick back up. And on to the next one, please. And then even in the last week, we're starting to see more like light truck and delivery drivers. Here again, childcare workers, some nursing positions, and again, other positions that track right along with those industries that we're posting the most. More signal, more positive signals. As you can see in those top ones, a pretty almost double the posting activity in this last 30 days than in the previous 30 days. So that's a positive trend there. And I think that was my last slide.
That's our last slide.
Yes, that was it.
All right. Well, normally this would be the part where you would walk off stage, Mr. Hawkins. We would have a thunderous applause for you, and I would say thank you for your time and see if there's any questions. Mr. Tolo, I just wanted to ask you, is there any kind of follow-up questions that anybody had, or if we are going to the polling question? Either way is okay on this virtual meeting.
Yeah, so people can write their questions in the chat box if they would like, and we do have later on a polling question on the gig economy, so that'll be coming up a little bit later. So thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Okay.
Absolutely.
On to our next speaker, shall we? All right. Hope you all are, you have good technical support going on at your house or your job or wherever you are joining us from on this Friday here on this State of the Workforce. Such an important topic to talk about in these uncertain times. Sometimes they say numbers don't lie, so I really appreciate the information, Mr. Hawkins, and we can digest that. Let's move on to Mr. Evan Enarson. I'd like to introduce him. He is the principal of Cambridge Systematics with over 12 years of experience in integrated planning and policy on a wide variety of topics. Those include transportation, economic development, and workforce and education. Evan has led strategic planning efforts for the Florida Chamber Foundation, Gulf Coast Community Foundation, Palm Beach North Chamber of Commerce, and regional agencies across Florida. Knows a thing or two about the Sunshine State. For CareerSource Florida, Evan is a lead researcher, study exploring and the impacts and opportunities of the gig economy on Florida's workforce system. So, Mr. Enarson, we will hand it over to you now with your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone who's joining us on this Friday morning. We're excited to hear from all our great panelists and then talk a little bit about what the state of the workforce is like. So we're going to pull up a presentation on the gig economy and just kind of provide some detail and some of the key issues that we're experiencing and that I think are very relevant right now. So when we're out talking to groups about the gig economy, you know, really those first questions we get is just what is the gig economy? How do you define it? Who's in it? Who's not? And it's really not an easy question to answer. And in fact, we really don't have a commonly accepted definition across the agency. What we do really know is that there's traditional work arrangements, all of our full-time and part-time workers. There's a lot of non-traditional work arrangements, independent contractors, seasonal workers, temp agency workers, unpaid family workers. And we can measure all of these through existing public data sources. What we really can't measure are those people who are doing bits and pieces here and there. Maybe they are in a traditional work arrangement, but they're also doing anything else on the side. The terms gig and freelance date back, you know, really to the turn of the century. This isn't necessarily a new thing that's emerging in the economy. What is new is really the driving force behind these online and technological platforms. That's really what we're seeing, a large increase in the ability for people to freelance on the side, to start their own business, to drive a car around the holidays to make some additional money. So there's, again, we're from a policy perspective, we're taking a pretty broad and encompassing view of just, you know, what is the gig economy, and including things like, you know, remote workers and people who hold multiple jobs, and those are really self-employed, whether they're an unincorporated business or an incorporated business. And these are just some of the numbers and statistics from the state of Florida over the last little while, so you can kind of see the variety of different work arrangements that are out there. Next slide. So there's a pretty wide disagreement in just how many gig workers are out there and how many people are participating in this kind of online, temporary, sporadic economy that's out there. Some of the federal government data products and census that we rely on for so many of the data that John just previewed, they will put some estimates of people, you know, working in these kind of freelance online positions at anywhere from 1 to 10%. There's a number of other surveys from the Federal Reserve of Atlanta, as well as a number of larger private sources that put those estimates up to more than 30% of workers nationally are doing some sort of independent work, whether that is online or informal or in freelance or in any one of those kind of definitions that we just saw. And it's generally we're seeing more and more agreement around that kind of 30% number, which is really pretty significant when you think about it. And certainly with the impacts of COVID and the ability to shift much more to remote work as we're getting used to, I think we'll probably see the changing nature of the workforce really accelerate. And so those industries and occupations that are more task-based and project-based are just a little bit more suitable for, you know, employing workers who could be living across the globe and being connected. And so we're seeing a lot of growth in even things that were traditionally done in an office, but finance and accounting and legal and real estate. So many of these transactions can now be done really virtually just about anywhere. In Florida, with a little bit less emphasis on some of those industries that really can't be done virtually, manufacturing and production, and some others, may be really more likely than the national average to have a significant number of gig workers. And you can see 2 recent studies here in these maps. The top one in green was performed by JP Morgan Chase. They tracked the number of payments from online vendors coming into all of their banking accounts and customer accounts across the country. And you can see in the kind of shading, Florida pops out as one of those states where there's a really significant activity of that online vendor payments. ADP research, probably many of our payroll checks are processed through ADP. They too just did a similar study, kind of looking again at 1099 workers and people who are receiving supplemental income. And Florida in this study kind of popped out as the top state in the country for, again, these kind of independent work and independent income arrangements. Next slide. So looking at Palm Beach County, and again, recognizing that we truly can't measure the gig economy. We don't know how many 1099 workers there are at the county level or even really at the state level. We understand that many people are going to be holding full-time jobs and part-time jobs and doing things on the side. And again, our data systems, our employment and unemployment and economic development systems really aren't geared up to look at this kind of informal work arrangements. We can put some data up there in the top left. You'll see the number of self-employed workers who are in non-incorporated businesses. These are folks that may have an S corp or a partnership, or might just be reporting some self-employment income to the IRS, but they have no other employees besides themselves. Right there in the middle, there's about 50,000 of those, again, self-employed, who have some sort of incorporated business or arrangement. We're seeing, that 42,000 number of remote workers is probably significantly larger today, since we are all doing this remote, and I think that's certainly a trend we'll see. But those remote workers could be full-time, part-time, or truly just independent. Some other interesting data stats out there. There's a self-employment tax that you might qualify for when you report your incomes to the IRS. There's about 120,000 individual returns in Palm Beach County in the last year who claimed that self-employment tax and deduction, about 16% of all the returns out there. We can also look at health insurance through the new mandates. You're really either required to have employer-based health insurance or to do some sort of direct purchase. And this isn't necessarily a great measure of those independent work arrangements, but it's really a pretty significant portion of employed persons within the county who only have direct purchase, not employer-provided health insurance. So again, a snapshot, and you can kind of see the range over there, kind of puts us in that 10 to 30% range that we just spoke of. Next slide. So who are gig workers? This, again, is a very, very challenging question to answer. In reality, gig workers mirror the overall workforce of the country and the county. They could be every single one of us, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if any one of our moderates and our moderators and our panelists, or many people on the phone, are doing something on the side to bring in a little bit of income. Whether that's an adjunct professor or a hobbyist, or it really could be a huge range of things. So we've kind of identified a few archetypes to really kind of help understand who some of the gig workers are. You clearly have the people who are doing this on a full-time basis. They're probably pretty high skilled, probably pretty high income. They'll be doing those kind of professional or technical or kind of creative services online. Oftentimes they're going to have their own business. They might be independent contractors. They're fully invested in working for themselves whenever they want, typically online. You're also going to have, folks who are maybe a little bit reluctant. They're probably working one job or multiple jobs. They could really kind of be any wide variety of skills, but they've turned to some sort of gig work really out of necessity, maybe just to earn some additional income, or really because they don't have any other options. Maybe they're out of work and looking to get back into the workforce. It's kind of maybe a disenfranchised archetype out there too. One of the nice things about gig work, particularly online platforms, is that traditional barriers to work, vocational and physical disabilities, felony records, language barriers, a lot of these things you can bypass through those online platforms. And so this really does enable people who might not otherwise have career opportunities to, again, be productive and contribute and even grow and start their own business. You've got a lot of supplementers out there. I'm sure you've had a lot of conversations with Uber and Lyft drivers. There's a lot of people who are just doing something, whatever it might be, around the holidays, just bringing in some more income, doing something, during the summers if things wind down, or to pay for medications or a major event. I think there's a lot of activity out there. Again, whatever that might be, whether it's transportation or delivery or something on the kind of a little bit of higher end. Certainly in Florida, the retiree model, there's a lot of people who are out there even volunteering to be a proctor in a museum or a school, or serving on a board of a nonprofit organization, driving a car, again, just to kind of stay engaged, just to do something, just to get out of the house, whatever that might be, but they're also able to contribute significantly through the online platform. And then some of the things we kind of don't necessarily think about as being in the gig economy is a lot of those people who are creating things, whether they're goods or whether it's music or graphic design or freelance writing, selling things on Etsy, even through an eBay business. There's a lot of these platforms that have been around for decades, but have really seen a lot of growth now. So you can kind of also think about the gig economy as not just that services, but also goods producing as well. Next slide. So shown here on the screen is the results of a statewide survey that CareerSource Florida commissioned in the last year. So this is a sample of about 800 or so workers across the state. And we asked them really a wide variety of questions. And I think this again illustrates that the gig workers are across the employment, education, income, gender, race, geographic location spectrum. You really can't point to any one demographic and say that, yes, the millennials and the higher incomes are likely to be gig workers. This is truly a little bit all of us, and there's so many different varieties and niches in online gig work that there's really a little bit about all of us. I think, very interestingly, you can see the kind of top results on the left is that most of these people who reported doing some sort of freelance or gig or online work in the last year were also employed full time. And so again, that makes it challenging to truly measure the scope of the gig economy. And you can kind of go down and see some of those things we might always otherwise think about in terms of archetypes, retirees and students and unemployment, a little bit less likely. Our gig workers really are people who are doing something on the side because they want to. They want to build their own business, again, bring in that additional income, work for themselves, do something different. In terms of education, a little bit more highly educated than the overall workforce, but again, you're seeing a pretty significant spread there. Again, because the opportunities through the gig economy are really pretty significant and varied for all types. Similarly, with income, you certainly see patterns with remote workers and self-employment and incorporated businesses at much higher incomes. But again, this is really opening up the labor market to allow entry for a lot of different folks and a lot of different people. Next slide. So this is just a slide kind of illustrating, there's a number of online platforms out there, Fiverr and Upwork and Freelancer, that really provide, again, an online platform to people to go on, create a profile, advertise their skills. And the idea here is that oftentimes when we think or we hear gig economy, we just go right to Uber and Lyft and Postmates. And I think we really need to understand and illustrate that there's a huge variety of work that's being done out there. Right off the top, a lot of the design work, digital work, all your software. Increasingly, we're seeing a lot more on the kind of higher end professional services of engineering and architecture and finance and legal. And I think this is something that's really going to accelerate due to COVID and again, due to the changing marketplace. This isn't really even capturing the whole gig economy that's in that cash or gray economy, particularly in Palm Beach County. There's just a wealth of truly independent and informal businesses that serve the marine and maritime industries, schmuck with a truck, people advertising services to their neighbors through Facebook, tutoring, educators looking for a little bit on the side, grading papers online from across the country. There's truly a lot of activities out here. Next slide. So from an economic development perspective, there's really a lot of opportunities and there's lots of challenges for this new labor market that's emerging out there. Certainly a lot of career pathways available. We mentioned folks with vocational disabilities, the deaf, the hard of hearing, felons, others with records, others with language barriers, people who may not have the same opportunities. Some of this online work can really enable those career pathways. Starter experience, experience building your own business. Once you're shielded behind the computer, you can really do a lot. So certainly individuals in rural areas across the state, migrants and refugees might be really able to go online and provide those translation and writing and design services that are truly kind of a universal skills now that everything's available online. Certainly that concept of supplemental income can be really, really important, not just around the holidays, but in kind of helping bridge unemployment gaps so that so many of the people who are out of work right now due to COVID might be able to go online and perform services and help bring some income in, support their families, but also gain a lot more experience and a lot more workplace experience too, that management, skills, financing, all of the stuff that goes along. And that really goes into the entrepreneurship model. Again, once you're kind of working for yourself, whether it be online, you need to learn how to market yourself, how to file your taxes, what are the right rates to charge for your services, how do I expand my business and my online profile. And these can all really lead into essential skills for actually building a more brick and mortar business that we kind of think about. Certainly, we spoke to a lot of economic developers across the state, and there's really an idea that this online work can really help diversify local economies and kind of strengthen local economies so that we're a little bit more resilient to economic shocks. Again, if all of us were going online and freelancing on the side, we would have some of those entrepreneurial skills and we would know how to manage a period of unemployment, a significant natural disaster, anything like that. We'd have someplace to turn even after the collapse of a major industry. There certainly are lots of challenges as well. The gig economy, you'll see this in the news constantly about kind of labor protections, those just basic discrimination, basic labor rights, overtime pay, all those really don't exist under the protections of the independent contractor. Similarly, what comes along with a full-time employment is often some sort of health insurance, savings accounts, even the ability to manage and predict your income streams over the years is much more challenging in the gig economy. And so there's a lot of new talk about creating entirely new insurance and savings markets to reach those individuals. Certainly for the higher income and higher skilled, to really perform work online, you need a good internet connection and a quiet place to work, and we don't always have that. Many people may only have a smartphone and not a computer. They may not have that quiet place in a crowded home. So opening up new opportunities in churches and community centers and underutilized retail centers now, public libraries, a lot of those kind of opportunities exist, again, to provide that internet connectivity and the quiet space. And again, to equip people to truly succeed in this, they are going to need the skills and computers and management and filing taxes and doing the business, everything that our entrepreneurs need as well. Otherwise, they really may not find the same successes in gig work. Next slide. So really quickly, this is kind of a look at what support from educational and training resources that might be needed. This is a national survey from Upwork and the Freelancers Union, and you can just kind of see lots of interest in gaining computer skills and business skills and marketing, how to expand opportunities, and then interestingly, the kind of who's bearing the cost of those skills in education. For the most part, they're going to be freelancer paid. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a freelancer. You probably qualify as an employee. A lot of time, people are turning to free online technologies. Maybe they're having a client pay for some additional training or software or other thing through a project. So just kind of an interesting perspective again from the workforce development system, but also from employers who are going to be increasingly turning to outsourcing. Again, basic finance and graphic design and IT and all these things, what kind of skills and support they might need. Next slide. So just kind of thinking about what everybody on the phone can do and what the CareerSource Florida system and all the great economic and educational partners across Palm Beach County. I think we really need to recognize that the nature of work is changing, and that's only going to accelerate with COVID. So we need to kind of move away from a lot of those traditional work-based employment programs and really kind of think about how we can better serve all the individuals, and particularly kind of independent work. There's a lot of ways to do that. Certainly changing the way that the federal system is funded and what kind of work placements and activities is recognized there. We want to be able to serve entrepreneurs and gig workers and help them succeed. But there's a lot of limits right now for education and workforce and economic development partners. Data is king. With data, we can actually manage and understand needs. But again, we don't even know how many people are out there doing these kind of things. There's also a lot of potential gaps in entrepreneurial programs. We've got a great SBDC network and others in Florida. But those are really geared towards, again, kind of setting people up for future business incorporation, not necessarily this, again, informal, independent work that can really be entrepreneurial, just not in this kind of same sense that we're set up to serve those workers. Again, kind of looking at how you engage businesses in independent work, what are their needs, what occupations are they going to be hiring in the future, what do they expect from independent workers is going to be kind of key to an economic development perspective. Again, those new underserved workers, disenfranchised workers, and even youth, and kind of helping them understand all the potential opportunities that are out there, along with the challenges that go along with it. And then there's a lot of opportunities there, just kind of thinking of LinkedIn and Fiverr and Upwork and the Freelancers Union, a lot of really interesting things happening in this space. And so opportunities for partnerships between high schools and the workforce system, the EDC organizations, lots of things that could potentially be done out there. I think next slide should be final. Just an illustration here of a picture, a placard in the back of an Uber saying, Uber is my part-time, but really this person's freelance gig is running a cloud. So again, just kind of an illustration, again, that there's multiple work and independent work opportunities out there. With that, thank you very much. I'll turn it back to Michael.
All right. Interesting, and I saw some smiles when we saw the clown billboard on the back there. But hey, wherever you can work in this economy, right? Wherever you can support your family or support yourself. So hey, thank you very much, Evan, and we will open it eventually to questions and answers. And Julia, are we going to wait for the polling question until the end for this one as well?
No, we can actually do a polling question right now. Ooh. So that should be up very shortly. Evan, thank you so much. Our data down here also reflects everything that you're saying, but I am surprised that Palm Beach County is 22% in the independent workforce. We probably could verify that down here as well, but to see it come across the screen in statistics was very impressive. So in your industry, are the new workforce options such as independent workers changing your recruitment, hiring, and education and training needs? So, the poll of our audience. Okay.
Hey,
We're back.
we are back. So we will keep moving along. And again, just thank everyone for sticking with this and this very important state of the workforce here in 2020. Here we are, August. Where did April, May, June, July go? But the one thing that remains constant is the gathering of data and the information that's out there, and really taking a critical look at it. I want to introduce our next speaker is Tony Delisi. He's actually a senior manager at Ernst & Young LLP and serves as the director of strategy for the Economic Development Advisory Services practice. He helps communicate he helps communities, I should say, create actionable economic development strategies to spur growth, address challenges, inspire innovation, and become more inclusive. He also has extensive experience facilitating complex community conversations, managing projects, conducting research, supporting diverse client economic development needs. That sounds very 2020, Mr. Delisi, and we are very glad to have you on the panel today. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, and I just want to, I should have put it in the introduction, but also very familiar with Palm Beach County and Florida. Just recently helped the city of West Palm Beach with their latest economic development strategy. In our former role was Avalanche Consulting. We also helped the Beacon Council produce their One Community, One Goal strategy for all of Miami-Dade County, Jax USA, their last two strategies, worked with Gainesville, the Florida Chamber Foundation. So it's nice to be back talking to folks in Florida and in Palm Beach County in particular. If we could get the first slide, please. And I know we're running a little late, so I'll try to keep it flowing, but and also get some energy here. But really, this is more about the story to tell. And I just want to point out, your workforce is a key driver for economic development before the pandemic and after the pandemic. When we were talking to companies and talking to communities, talent was really the #1 concern for businesses. When they're choosing where to locate or in their existing communities, they're looking for places that have skilled workers that meet their needs and also the ability to train them, whether that's at community colleges or universities. Next slide, please. And as a result of that workforce and talent really driving economic development, we've been seeing that jobs are following people and vice versa. I live in and based in Austin, Texas, and they used to joke that everybody came to Austin and then found a job, and we had more PhDs, baristas than anywhere in the country. But now, with all of the talent and the people that are here, the jobs are coming to Austin. You heard about the Tesla Gigabit factory, I'm sure, that was just recently announced. Part of that, driving that, was the fact that the engineering talent is here in Austin and the ability to attract those people here. And we're seeing this in Florida too. If you look at the chart there, the rapid growth in jobs in Florida corresponds as well to the population growth. And I always like to note, importantly, in the work that we've done and seen, that growth is not retirees, as the story for Florida has gone for years. But Florida has one of the fastest working age population growth in the whole country, and Palm Beach County in particular. And with recent trends around COVID, I put New York City on there to show. I know there's a lot of talk about people fleeing New York and big cities post-COVID, but this isn't just a COVID trend. We've been seeing this for decades. The population of New York has not grown for the last 10 years. And it actually, if you take out international migration, it has shrunk. So that trend may accelerate, but it's not new. And you really see those jobs looking to places like Palm Beach County and Florida as they follow where the talent and where the folks are going. Next slide, please. But really importantly, I think we need to note that the pandemic has created new workforce needs. It's not just that talent and that skills gap, but we've had significant job losses across the country. And Palm Beach County, Florida, is not unique to this. And it's important to note, while some of these are temporary, some of these are structural changes that we likely won't see come back. The trends in retail have been happening for ages as more and more sales go online. We're also seeing more and more automation, and it's likely that these are going to continue to accelerate. So we have a lot of workforce in your community and many communities that really are going to need that focus on reskilling, on new opportunities, to ensure that they can continue to find gainful employment, even if not every retail establishment comes back. And at the same time, businesses are still looking to find that particular skilled, talented workforce. Next slide. And to that point, it's interesting that skills gap, it's distinctly relevant to Palm Beach County. This is a national chart just looking at the magnitude of skills gaps before COVID-19. And it's fine print, I know, but you'll see at the top, the biggest gaps are in healthcare, business and financial operations, computer and mathematical, architecture and engineering. I don't know if those sound familiar, but what are some of the bigger industry sectors in Palm Beach County? Right along those lines. And so while it's exciting that we might be seeing businesses and individuals move to Palm Beach County, we will continue to see those big demands for talented, skilled workers in those areas. The really positive story here is that all of those are higher wage jobs. Those are the types of jobs that we want to see grow in the community. And we really have those ability to retrain or to train students that are coming up, but potentially as well, looking at folks that have been unemployed, that have been displaced. There are great prospects to retrain them into new career pathways in some of these growing high demand career areas. Next slide, please. I wanted to touch on this too. It's a big trend that we've been seeing for, it's a generational, long-standing concern in America, but really been top of mind over the last couple of years and accelerated even more in this COVID-19 moment, which are the concerns around equity, which is a significant both workforce and economic development issue. I like to always remind folks that workforce is about people. It can feel distant when we use terms like workforce, but we're talking about individual humans in our communities and helping them find good jobs. And economic development on the other end is also about people. We're not creating jobs for jobs' sake. We're creating jobs for the people that live in our communities. And ultimately, if our efforts to train individuals and to create jobs aren't serving the whole community, then we're failing at our mission. And there are many opportunity gaps that we see in education and workforce and the barriers to address them in communities across the country. The orange bar there shows where Palm Beach County fits in the 35 largest metros. It's not the worst kind of gaps that we see in income. But if you could see the next slide, please. The really exciting story here is that the focus on equity and on inclusion is directly tied to growth. This chart might be a little hard to read here, but what we see going along the horizontal axis is employment growth, and the other side is an inclusivity index that we put together. And essentially what you can see across the country is that those cities that are more inclusive are also creating more jobs and growing more quickly. And there's a number of dynamics going on here. Growing cities and growing communities create the wealth necessary to address our equity needs and to help people in those communities. And inclusive cities are stronger. They support businesses better, and those businesses thrive. For those and other reasons, we also see that people and businesses are attracted to inclusive, diverse places. And if there's any lesson you take away from this, I think it's always remembering that our broad economic development efforts that are focused on helping the whole community grow, on workforce efforts, focused on getting educational opportunities, career pathways to everybody, are going to lift up and grow the entire community. Next slide, please. So summarizing a bit of what I showed here, and this is just tip of the iceberg on all these economic development concerns, is that talent really does continue to be a top priority for economic development. Just because a lot of folks have been laid off does not mean that the skills gap or the difficulties finding employees has become easier. The nature of work and workplaces are changing, as we've seen. with shifts in the decline in retail and the increase in automation that's accelerating right now. And technical skills are more important than ever. These trends aren't going to stop. So reskilling will need to go on throughout the life of every person. There's going to be new technology that comes about, new shifts in the economy, things like COVID-19 that we haven't even predicted yet. And at the same time, we're also seeing those shifts in talent migration. Palm Beach County is already a beneficiary of this. We've seen it for many years with cost of living concerns in New York and other places. In the recent tax law changes that led to many financial firms seeking locations in Florida. And really, the other side too is this, importantly, that the successful economic development and workforce efforts, really having those focus on equity and inclusion across the community to make sure that the whole system is working. And so, next slide, please. When we think a little bit about how we do this, part of it is building that culture of lifelong learning. It's breaking down silos between work and education, which I know are going on in Palm Beach County, but continuing to do this, continuing to make sure that we have alignment between our educators, our employers, our students, and our adult learners. I don't have them on the slide, but we can't forget about them. And it's getting those folks working together, getting them aligned. I loved hearing from Evan and John, the importance of data in this, knowing your local specifics, what are the jobs that are growing, what are the skill sets that they need, will allow us to be much more successful in developing programs to address them. And overall, making this easier, investing in technology, rethinking how we can update the experience of workforce development. As we see thousands of folks entering the job roles where we have social distancing and concerns about infections, how can we constantly be rethinking, making it easier for people to access services, to gain knowledge, to know what resources are available to them? And this next slide, please. The last here, I'll close with just a couple of examples. These aren't new, these aren't COVID related, but and there are many across the country, but if you look at San Antonio, their Alamo Academy's program is particularly significant. Really, this one is targeted at high school students, but bringing in the community colleges, the employers, thinking about what their local industry opportunities are. And critically here is that the students gain college credits, but they're also paid a salary as they're working during their school year, able to support themselves, and then transitioning either directly into high-paying career pathway jobs or going on to future college to go even further, perhaps getting an engineering degree and so forth. And really, this is a tremendous success in lifting folks out of poverty, connecting them with opportunities, serving local employers with really high demand needs that they had. And next slide, please. And my last example is in Philadelphia, the Job Opportunity Investment Network program. And unlike the other, which was focused more on high school students, this is really focused on adults. And it was a public-private partnership focused on training low-wage workers to create opportunities into middle and high-wage pathways. And they've had tremendous success really just leveraging those relationships, bringing together educators, employers, and more to make those investments in people and also in the tools to evaluate that, technological tools to help people succeed. And really, there's money up front required, but this has had a significant return on investment for all of those folks. As we know, turnover is a high cost for every business. The training each time is a high cost, the searching and the difficulties there. So really taking it into the folks' own hands to bring people in, give them those opportunities and build them up for success, and the whole community has benefited. So try to keep it short. I know we were running a little late, but I hope that was interesting to folks. And I know this is exciting, scary times, but very exciting on the economic development side. There's a lot of great work being done.
Well, thank you, Mr. Delisi, and to our three folks that spoke here today. Just all important to just sit there and digest and listen to. Just so interesting in this time, in this uncertain time here in 2020. Here we are. Mr. Tolo, I will kind of turn it over to you. I believe we have another polling question for audience participation.
We are. It's already up on the screen. So within the next 1 to 5 years, my business plans to employ independent workers to meet my business needs. Strongly agree, neither or disagree, strongly disagree. So. And Tony, I just want to mention that everything you said is exactly what we're seeing. Actually, all of you, everything that you're saying is exactly what we're seeing here in Palm Beach County. I have to say, when the statistics come out, it just seems like Palm Beach County seems to be the tip of the spear. We're seeing the more independent workers, but we're also looking at upskilling, reskilling our workforce to meet what COVID has done to us, and how quickly in the face this has become to the workforce of having to retool and pivot to be successful. So I thank you so much for everything that you have brought to us. And here are our results. So I'm glad to see this. So neither disagree, okay, or strongly agree. Those seem to be the two highest. Very good. Well, thank you to our IT department that got that up so quickly. Anyways, not sure if we have any questions. I don't see anything in the Snapchat box. So I just, anybody have any last comments they'd like to make?
Well, I know, to what your point, I know that the BDB and others have been doing great work around this for years, and I just encourage all of you continuing to speak to each other is always the advice that I say. If you're feeling frustrated as a business or an educator, reach out to somebody and ask a question, because there are so many great relationships out there, and it begins with a conversation.
Yes, it does, Tony. And I'm really proud that in Palm Beach County, we all play in the same sandbox and we play well together. So, so it's always a pleasure to work with our county, our BDB, our Economic Council, and all our nonprofits as well to help the workforce and training aspects of it. So thank you to all of you. And thank you, Mike. With that being said, thank you, Mike, and all of us for joining us today. I hope you were able to take away a lot of important points that were discussed. I want to thank our moderator and our speakers for their gift of time and knowledge. And to our audience, as always, please let CareerSource help you with your recruiting or hiring needs, and even your training needs. So thank you all. Have a good day and stay safe.
Thanks all.